First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua. That's all praises to the Most High God in the name of His only begotten Son, who the Word in we call Jesus Christ. It's the brother Ali Yah from the angels of Yahweh. I want to drop a quick breakdown on Revelations chapter 7 and verse 9, right? It's kind of like the basics, a quick and easy breakdown is Revelation 7 and 9 about all nations, because a lot of Christians would like to say that, right, that this verse means that salvation can be for all people, all mankind, right? But through the Spirit, we got to prove that actually this verse is about Israelites, right? Israelites scattered abroad, right? So let's get right into it. So this Revelations chapter 7 and verse, I'm going to start at verse 4 to get the context. It says, and I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel, right? So we know about the 144,000, the elect being all Israelites, right? And verse 5 says, of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000, of the tribe of Reuben were sealed 12,000, of the tribe of Gad were sealed 12,000. So on and so forth, till you get down to verse 9, it says, right, and this is what we're going to be breaking down. Revelation 7 and 9, after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands, right? So we're going to read it again from the top. It says, after this, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, right? So let's go ahead and go to the scriptures and see who's the great multitude according to the Bible, right? So let's go to 2nd Esdras 3 and 16. Right, so this 2nd Esdras chapter 3 and verse 16. And unto him thou gavest Isaac, and unto Isaac also thou gavest Jacob and Esau. As for Jacob, thou didst choose him to thee, and put by Esau. And so Jacob became a great multitude, right? Just like you see in Revelations, beheld a great multitude. That's speaking about the Israelites, right? That was 2nd Esdras 3 and verse 16. Right, so let's go back to Revelations. We're just going to break it down bit by bit. Right, it says, after this, Revelation 7 and 9. After this, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, right, which would be Jacob. It says, which no man could number, right? Okay, so we're going to get a precept on that. It said, which no man could number. We're going to prove that that's also talking about the Israelites, right? That's talking about the Israelites. That's why it's important to know the precepts, go precept upon precept. So, all right, so this Hosea 1 and 10. Remember, it says, which no man could number. That's also speaking about Israel too. This Hosea 1 and 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered, just like Revelation 7 and 9 says, which no man could number, right? So this is speaking about the Israelites, but if you don't, dive into the scriptures, you won't really know that. Like most Christians, they just like to take things out of context and try to apply verses like this in John 3:16 to everybody, right? It says, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in a place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God. Right? But that was the point. Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. You know, and that's what we read about in Revelations, right? Reading on, let's go back to Revelations. So, hey, this verse is not about all nations receiving salvation. That's not what it's about, right? We're going to start from the top again, Revelation 7 and 9. After this, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and peoples and people and tongues stood before the throne, right? So let's go into this word in the Greek for kindreds, right? And it's going to show you that this is actually speaking on the Israelites. Shalakia. Let me flip my camera. All right, so we're in the Blue Letter Bible. Right, we're just kindreds. All right, so this the word for kindreds right here. Let's play that.
Strong's G 5443. Foulet.
Right. So, right, you see that? Look at the biblical usage. It says in the New Testament, where Revelations is obviously the last book of the New Testament. It says in the New Testament, all the persons descending from one of the 12 sons of the patriarch Jacob. Right. So this is when it says all nations and kindreds, it's still talking about the 12 tribes, right? You know, so this whole verse is going back to the Israelites. It's not, you know, it's not all nations being saved. That's not what it's about, right? Salaki. Right, let's finish that out. This wasn't going to be too long. It's a quick breakdown. Right, for the newer brothers and sisters in the faith, it says, after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, right? So let's deal with the all nations part. We just dealt with the kindreds part. Why did it say all nations? Is it talking about the Edomites, right? Even though you got the book of Obadiah talking about how all Edomites would be destroyed. No, it's saying all nations because you had the Israelites scattered into all nations, right? Let's go to Acts 2 and 5. All right, so this is Acts chapter 2 and verse number 5. It says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven, right? Just like we see in Revelations, you know, but in Acts it says Jews because the Israelites are scattered in all nations due to the curses of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, right? Deuteronomy 28 and 64. It says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now, when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language, right? So you had Israelites, Jews speaking in their own language, right? In the language of the nation that they were scattered at, right? And that's why in Revelation 7 and 9, it says, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, right? Because you may have look, I'm in a Babylon the Great, so I'm speaking English, right? But you may have an Israelite in China that's speaking, wherever the Moabites language is, right? You may have Israelites in Mexico or Dominican Republic speaking Spanish, right? So that's the in tongues part, right? I'm gonna read that part again. It says Acts 2:6. Now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded because that every man heard them speak in his own language. Right? So you see that? And that's what it's talking about when when it says of all nations. You have Israelites in all nations, right? Jews in all nations, right? Speaking different languages. It's very simple, right? So, and that's really it, right? Let me just finish the verse out. It says, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. Right. So this is about the Israelites, Revelation 7 and 9. A lot of people think that this is about all nations receiving salvation. No, that's not what it's about. And then look at this, right? It says a multitude from the tribulation, right? What's the tribulation? Jacob's trouble. Let me go ahead and show that real quick. So like, all right, so you see that? It says a multitude from the tribulation. So these the Israelites that got saved from the tribulation, which is Jacob's trouble. Let's go ahead and go to Jeremiah, what was that, 30 and verse 3 or 30 and 7, all right? This Jeremiah 30 and 7. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even a time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Right. So you see that? Right. So let's go to Daniel 12. So like, is this what I want? Man, Prince, there shall be a time of trouble. Right. So basically they're saying the same thing, but in Matthew 24 it says the same thing about a great tribulation, but you get the point. Right. When you go back to Revelation 7, it says a multitude from the tribulation. The tribulation is Jacob's trouble, right? So everybody's not Jacob. That's only the Israelites, So there you have it, right? Lord willing, this was an edifying breakdown. You could understand it. It's not really that hard to understand, right? That Revelations 7 and 9 isn't about all people being saved, but it's actually about the 12 tribes, right? Getting saved from Jacob's trouble, you know, a multitude from the tribulation, right? This isn't about everybody, but with that, I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Hashem, Hamashiach, Wamalak, Yahweh Shai. I want to say, Kwan Yahshua, Shalom.